Jose Berlanga is the CEO of Houstonian Capital and Onyx Land Partners. Originating from Mexico City and beginning his entrepreneurial journey as a teenager in Houston, Jose has built a remarkable career transitioning from the energy sector to real estate and construction. In this episode, Jose shares his journey that began with exporting oil and gas machinery, fueled by a natural inclination towards entrepreneurship and his father's industry influence. He offers a unique perspective on fear, stress, and anxiety, seeing them as motivators rather than obstacles. Jose delves into the importance of early entrepreneurial ventures, advocating for action to relieve anxiety, stressing the need for persistence and realistic expectations in business. We also explore his strategic approach to business, the evolution of his career through shifts in the market, and the growth challenges faced within real estate. From his initial investments to developing single-family homes and writing insightful books like The Business of Home Building and the upcoming Dirt Rich, Jose offers a wealth of knowledge. As always, if you found value from this content, please like and subscribe. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Beyond Fulfillment Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Goulis, and this week, my guest is the CEO of Houstonian Capital and Onyx Land Partners, Jose Berlanga. Welcome, Jose.
Good morning, Dave. Well, great to be here. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Appreciate you asking, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here, and thanks for having me in your show.
Absolutely. So we were just talking off camera, and you've had quite a journey as an entrepreneur over the past 30 years. Can you tell us how you got started and give us your backstory?
Yes, my backstory as an entrepreneur is very long, of course, and very traditional. One of those kids that wanted to be his own boss at some point and started dabbling in understanding the fundamentals of business from a very young age. But the opportunity came about. I was young enough where I could just gamble with my future and not necessarily require a job. So I started with the first opportunity that came about when I arrived to United States. I grew up in Mexico City, which I had already attempted to do a lot of unofficial business, buying and selling things and trying to figure out how to make some money. But not until I arrived in Houston and started an exporting company for machinery for the oil and gas that my official career as an entrepreneur began. And I was very young. I was 17 actually when I started my first business. So that led to a number of things, to a number of opportunities. The fact that I started as an entrepreneur very young, it established me as a reliable person that appeared to be the guy to go to whenever other people had interesting ideas. I was the person that people wanted to go to in order to start their own businesses. So I began to get into a lot of other different industries.
Okay, so let's start there. So you grew up in Mexico City, and then did you come over when you were a teenager then?
Yes, to start going to the university. I came to go to college. The U.S. has always been part of our second home because my father was in the oil and gas business at the time. And Houston, Texas, being an energy related town, the capital of energy, we used to travel here quite a bit. So we always had a second home in the US. So it was a very natural progression for us to eventually come here to go to school. And eventually, you know, we started a business. I started a business, and it just made sense to continue. So yes, we came here to start all over again. Once I got into a school, I always wanted to start my business. So it was a very immediate decision. Let's do it. I didn't want to wait until I graduated from college to start learning about it. So immediately I started looking for opportunities, and that was the most logical because that's the industry, the area where I knew some people, where I understood a little bit about it, and started the journey.
Okay. Well, and a great lesson there too, because you, like you said, you came over here and you're in university, you're 17 years old, and you didn't want to wait. So you made a move before you're ready and you took action and you started. And you had the wherewithal to start within an industry that you, like you said, you knew some people, you had some basic understanding. So it seemed to make sense to you at the time. Well, like give us an idea, like you're 17, right? And still so inexperienced, right, at that time. What was it like getting that business off the ground and growing it being so young?
When you start a business, some entrepreneurs have a very good idea of what they want to do and how they want to execute their companies and their vision. If you start young enough, you might not really know what you're doing, but that might be an asset. You don't know what you're getting into. All you have is energy, willingness, the desire to do something, and you just go with the flow. You go one day at a time, learning, experimenting with things, and with very little pressure, which is one of the wonders of starting businesses when you are still young enough. Because that fear of the unknown and the stress of having to produce an income right away somewhat is it's reduced to a minimum. So it was a relatively simple. I often get asked the question of how I got away from the fear and the concern of starting my own business. I was a little bit different. My fear was to wait until I graduated. By the way, I was going to school when, particularly in Texas, there was a major economic crisis. The oil prices had dropped horribly. The oil industry in general was going through a horrible moment in time. And I my concern was to go through my studies only to find out that I could not find a job, because that was the environment that was that was clear at the moment. And I had more of a concern to not start a business. So I would say that it's the opposite of most people. Most people worry and stress and get concerned about how they're going to start a business and how is it going to work. I was more worried about not doing something right away and waiting. So this is something that I always recommend young people to do. Don't wait around, because it's much simpler to start dabbling and learning while you are going to school. If you have the opportunity to go to college, don't wait. I mean, do both at the same time and take advantage of all the time and the energy that you have at that moment.
That's an interesting perspective too. And like you said, your fear was different, but regardless, you use that fear as a motivator and channeled it into action, which is so important.
Yes, I love stress. Everybody throughout my life have told me to stop worrying, to stop stressing, to stop rushing. Um, I am naturally a worrier. I am naturally an anxious person that is always busy. I create work. I come up with lists of things to do all the time. That's just the way that my mind is wired. And the way that I explain it to some people is, this stress, this concern of mine has led me to achieve a few things in life. If I was always relaxed and I was always confident and I was always thinking that things are going to go the way that I plan them and the way that I anticipate them, perhaps I wouldn't have done as much. I wouldn't have learned as much. And I would have assumed that things are just going to happen as planned. And that's not necessarily the way that life works. So I attribute, I don't recommend people to overstress and over worry, but I do recommend people to use that to their advantage, because the combination of stress and worrying with action lead you to success and lead you to getting things done. When you stress and worry and do nothing about it and procrastinate, that's a problem. So naturally, those attributes of being a person that is always thinking and that is always planning are not bad. The bad part is not to do anything about it. So it's okay if you're one of those stressful type of personalities which come together. They're very much part of the world of entrepreneurship. Just use them to produce. Use them. Use those particular stresses in life to get you to do things. The biggest, the most important medicine in my life against anxiety is to knock things off of my list of things to do. You have no idea how much that relaxes me. That is my medicine, and doing as many things as I can any given day is what makes me feel better. And I would think that a lot of entrepreneurs share this particular attribute and personality.
Yeah, and so true. And numerous people have said that in different ways. I don't know that I've ever heard it said. I guess your quote would be action is the best medicine for anxiety.
Absolutely, absolutely. For me, it is sitting around thinking about it, worrying about it. I'm one of those people that the moment that I start getting a little nervous and anxious about the next day or about some of the thousand problems that are always going on in any business, particularly a growing business and expanding business, I just sit and attack them and start producing solutions. I love thinking about theoretic scenarios of how a business will end up going, because you start solving problems before they even show up. Once you have enough experience in the business world and understand that rarely business goes in the direction that you anticipated, you start developing your ability to design paths in which your businesses might end up, and start creating sort of like a chess player where you already envisioning where your opponent might go or might attempt to go, and you start designing responses. That's what a busy mind of an entrepreneur does, and that's what makes you progress and advance in business, because you're always prepared for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, anticipation. Love that.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, right, things not going as planned. Like you said, you started your first business in the energy sector because that's what you knew, but much of your business career has actually been in real estate and construction. So can you tell us how that happened?
Yes. The business world is very interesting, because it will take you wherever the opportunities are. Some good, some bad. If you happen to be in a particular company, business industry that is changing, like mine did at that moment, where my niche market began to disappear, no matter how you modernized it. The brokering of machinery for the oil and gas began to change a lot, where new distributors were where the internet came about, in little by little it began to change. And it is important for entrepreneurs to always recognize and not get too stubborn about what is happening with their industries, and either modernize them, adapt, or move on. There are moments where you have to decide whether what you are currently doing is beginning to be a waste of money and time. I don't call it quitting. I call it being realistic, avoiding this denial phase that a lot of entrepreneurs have by staying in a business that is no longer working for you. So at one point, it wasn't working. It was changing. My vendors weren't paying their bills, and before you know it, I was out of business. And it took me a while to get into real estate. It was an opportunity that came about years later. There were many other businesses that I was involved in. I I never have time to really discuss all the attempts and startups and investments that I made that failed. And I learned about each one of them over the years and over time. And I'm really more known in the real estate because that is where most of my success occurred. I was a participant in other industries where some I made money and eventually didn't work out. And eventually I ended up in real estate with a very, very small investment, with a very, very small company, just building one little, not even a home, we call them bungalows, in those transitional neighborhoods back in the 90s with a very small investment. And it was a struggle to get it started. And it was a gamble because that industry wasn't doing very well. And it was a very speculative investment back then, building in transitional inner city neighborhoods. But we thought it was something to give it a shot. My brother and I started this construction company. And to our surprise, our home sold. We tried it again. We built another one, and then we built 2 and 4 and began to grow. And eventually it turned into a pretty decent sized company. But it was a transition that took years in the making. By the way, it took several years before we actually turned a profit. We didn't make money in our first house or our second, and we had the patience, perhaps the mental capacity to understand that a business doesn't really make a profit right away. And we were frugal enough to figure out how to live through that period of time without making any money, living on very, very little money at the time just to get by. And one day it began to make money and to grow. And it turned into a strong player in the residential construction business. But it was quite a challenge and it took a long time.
Attention e-commerce sellers. Is fulfillment a headache for you? Whether you're fulfilling in-house and you know you need to outsource, or you're with another 3PL and you know you deserve better service, Easy DC 3PL can help. We offer personal service, fast response time, and we're flexible to meet your unique needs. Get in touch today and find out how we can help you. Yeah, and that's another great lesson you bring up is just patience in terms of just listing the years that you were out there making attempts and trying different things and failing and continuing to hang in there and try again. And then even when you had something that started to work, like you said, it wasn't profitable right away. You had to endure some pain and some losses and, for years before you actually turned the corner and it really grew into a successful and profitable business.
Absolutely. And you need to acquire that obsession of making your business work to the point where you are so busy making it work, doing what you need to do. I remember that it was consuming because we not only had no experience, but we were confronted with the array of activities that this business represented, from the construction aspects to purchasing the material costs, dealing with accounting, dealing with legalities, dealing with the city, with permits, with city planning, different departments. You were going crazy every day just trying to get to the next stage and achieve just the very fundamentals. That time went by. Little by little, we were learning, we were growing, we were so absorbed. And my point is that if you are really involved in your activities, time goes by very quickly. I mean, it was 4 or 5 years we were trying to build this business, and you lose track of time. And it takes years. I often say that perhaps a good number, a good point of reference to build a business is 10 years. Everybody starts seeing your success and assumes that you are an overnight success, but it truly, I don't see how a business can turn into anything of value in less than that. It's just a standard, unless you're inheriting the money or buying an existing business, which is a completely different conversation altogether. But if you are a startup, if you're starting from the ground up and building a business, it takes years in a lot of growing pains before you actually start enjoying the fruits of your labor. And you have to be ready for it physically and mentally. So it's something that the average entrepreneur, I always like to talk about the average entrepreneur. There are those exceptions of people that ran into some idea or concept and it just took off. But I don't like to discuss that those particular examples because they're rare. The average startup, the average entrepreneur has to battle the basics of starting and building a company. And sometimes we feel alone because we only hear the stories of those incredible experiences and unique examples. The Facebooks, the Amazons, the Teslas, and the big monster, the Microsofts, Oracles, all these crazy companies that just experience this amazing exponential growth that happened. And even those took years, by the way, but they did experience a ridiculous exponential level of growth. And that rarely happens. So we start comparing ourselves to some of those concepts and start thinking that maybe we're doing something wrong, that maybe we're just not qualified, capable, or smart enough to operate a business. And no, that's just the way it is for most of us. It's important for entrepreneurs to understand that that is the way it is for most of us. It's going to be difficult. You're not going to grow at that level. If you're making a profit, you're already one of the rare, unique businesses that are successful, because a majority do not even stay in business. So yes, we need to be a little more realistic and compare ourselves with the right type of examples.
Do you see that as like the biggest reason people give up is, like you said, just comparing themselves to maybe these exceptions and not really understanding what the journey really is and all the pain and the extended time that it takes?
I believe so. Most people fantasize about the business world in a very unrealistic way. We tend to think and see business ownership as something much more fun, exciting, profitable. We tend to believe that we're about to enter this magical world where you are the boss, you own your time, you get to direct people and simply become the visionary, the captain of the boat with all these people around you running around doing things for you. And the reality is very different, at least in the early years. You are taking on a task that is going to be very painful, where you're going to be Mr. Everything. You're going to be the assistant, the runner, the accountant. You're going to be behind the desk, working multiple shifts. And when people come to terms with what it truly represents, and that it's not just about linear success and consistent growth, that you're going to go back many, many times, just like the waves in the ocean. One day you're moving this way and you're going back and forth and back and forth. Sometimes you're ahead, but most of the times the currents are pushing back because competition is monumental in every industry. There are too many people attempting the same concepts and ideas. And once you face that resistance, you realize that maybe this is not as interesting or fun or easy as we anticipated. And yes, a lot of people quit. A lot of people do not apply that mind over matter, that persistence that it's required to continue. They don't have perhaps the passion or the willingness to put up with the pain. But once you get there, then it starts becoming that a new reality of an entrepreneur. Once you cross that bridge and you get to a point where your business begins to do well, that's when you begin to enjoy the privilege of being a business owner and a business operator. But you have to go through that very, very difficult stage. And if you're not, you're simply not going to get to the next level. If you don't go in with the mental state of mind that it's going to be a lot of stress and a lot of pressure and a lot of risk in the early stages, it's going to be difficult to move forward.
Okay. Appreciate you detailing your journey and on all those attributes as well. I mean, that's valuable. So tell us present day what you're doing with Houstonian Capital and then Onyx Land Partners.
Well, I continue to operate construction companies, real estate investments. It's something that by now it's comes natural to me. I've been in it for so many years, and interestingly enough, the real estate in just about every business continues to change. Even today, I continue to adapt the way that we do things. Innovation, new generations, new technology, apps, the way that every business is conducted needs to change. I've seen previous generations. I remember where people lost their businesses because they were unwilling to adapt to new technologies, and before you know it, they were obsolete. I'm observing that in every industry now with AI, with the number of technological advances. We are going through some of that. Even the new concepts that are appearing within the real estate, the number of investors jumping in, the way that investments are happening, developments are happening, are changing. And we are, to answer the question, I remain in different sectors of real estate: commercial, residential, retail, rental income, passive investments, but also we're very, very active in land development. There's a lot of competition, of course, because now real estate is not the same that it was 10, 20, or 30 years ago, where the barrier of entry might have been a little tougher. Now it's relatively easy for anybody to jump in and raise a little bit of capital, and before you know it, you're competing with many, many people. I often get asked the question, so who's your biggest competitor? And my answer is, I don't have one. I just have a ton of small competitors fighting for the same deals. And if you don't become an expert in your field and understand your niche market, the sector that you're in, it becomes very, very difficult to grow and to stay in business. So we've maintained a portfolio of different types of real estate. Now the bulk of our activities are still in single family and land development, where the bigger companies, the public companies, are taking over, as they have the residential construction market. There's a lot of new developments that are now being built just for the purpose of renting. There's a new concept now because of inflation, because of the difficulties of home ownership. A lot of developers and public companies and investors have noticed there's a gap in the market where there are people who want to live in a single family home, but they cannot afford the down payment. They want to own a home, but they can't. So they're starting to either build or buy developed, completed residential developments and renting them. This is a relatively new market, and corporate America is responding to it by acquiring all and building entire subdivisions just for rental purposes. So we are doing some of that. We're building and delivering homes to some of these companies that are doing these type of investments, and also becoming one of the players where we retain some of our inventory. The ideal is home ownership. I've always been pro pro home ownership because it is good for society. It is good for the nation in so many different ways, for communities. It engages people to take better care of their neighborhoods when they actually have a stake in it by owning a home. But unfortunately, not everybody can afford one, and you have to have both types of products for people who are going to go in and own their home, and for the ones who can only rent in the short term.
Okay. All right. And if people want to get in touch with you, Jose, find out more about what you're doing, or reach out for any other reason, what's the best way that people can get in touch with you?
They can reach me at joseberlanga.com. That is my website. We're at Onyx tx.com, and of course all of my social media, YouTube, Facebook, and all the normal traditional social media outlets. But joseberlanga.com is really the easiest way. My book is out, The Business of Home Building, and Dirt Rich is about to come out, my second book that's focused on land development, land investing, and land speculating. Everything that has to do with selecting the right piece of property for the right purpose. And I'm very excited about this second book that's about to come out.
Tell us about the book that's coming out. So what made you decide to start writing books?
This was writing books has been something that I've been considering for a long time. All of us have those hopes and dreams and ideas that we keep putting off. Hey, one day I'm going to learn this, or one day I'm going to do that or the other. And this was one of them for me. One day I'm going to write a book. I didn't necessarily originate with the idea of writing about real estate. That was not what I intended to write. I wanted to write about other things, more about entrepreneurship and adversity, and about my life experiences. But once I talked to people who do this for a living and who are much more experienced, they recommended that I start writing about some of the things that I have the most experience in. So that is why I began writing about home building, the business side of the construction business, which there was very little material out there, by the way. Which I surprised myself to find very, very little way on the business side of the construction and entrepreneurship, by the way. But eventually I pivoted a little bit with a second book, talking about the importance of land in everything that has to do with real estate. Everything begins with a proper selection of a piece of dirt, from its purpose, its location, the value, how to select all of those components from the location. What should I pay? Why should I select this piece? What is the purpose of what I intend to do with this particular piece? And how to understand my involvement in the industry itself. What is my participation, and how to better understand how do I fit in this industry? So I began all of these ideas and concepts and turned them into a book. I think it will be very, very helpful, not only for new developers, for investors, or anyone who wants to participate in real estate, which I keep saying that at some point, all of us get exposed to real estate. Whether you are in any business that requires even a lease, you require space, you buy a home, you end up renting property. At some point, we will all be exposed to real estate one way or the other. So I talk about it and how to really understand some of the fundamental aspects of this industry before you get into it. So it's a very thought-provoking book, and it was fun. It was fun to write and to unload all these ideas and thoughts. So my biggest problem when I'm writing is condensing information, and I have so many. I'm one of those very, very busy type of brains that it is difficult to just summarize all of these ideas and turn them into chapters, because there's so much to say and so much to talk about. So it was quite a process, and I will continue to do that. I'm working now on a more general, more broad entrepreneurship book on how to start a business, how to build one, what it means to be an entrepreneurship, what is the mentality, what is the logic behind it, and what it means. So I'm having a blast. This is turning into a new phase of my career of writing books, and I hope to continue doing it for as long as I can.
Okay. Well, appreciate you sharing all that, and we will link the info on the books in the show notes as well for everyone.
All right. Thank
Well,
you so much.
yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, Jose. We really appreciate it. And that is all the time we have for now. We will see you next time.